And we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy almost Thanksgiving to our American friends. Super excited today. We're wrapping up our So You Want to Build a Brand with the one and only Laura Maccarone. She's a longtime friend and fellow creator. We've worked together. She's helped me. I've helped her. It's just been a beautiful partnership, and she is the person that came up with the idea for this topic this month because people come to us both saying, I need help with my brand. And we were laughing because it means two very different things. When you need help from me, it's in the form of content and copy. When you need help from Laura, it is beautiful graphics and design. So the whole purpose of this series was to honor that kind of thought that Laura had about the differences in types of branding. The first week, if you missed it, we talked with Malika Malhotra about why establishing kind of a brand identity and focus is so important. That was a great way to set the stage. Last week, we talked with Andrea Schweinbach about photography and why that's such an important part of the brand. Today, we are going to wrap it up with Laura and really bring it on home. You know, what's more important, graphics or copy? How do you help people when someone comes to you and says, so I need to build a brand? Why is consistency so important? So without further ado, Laura, give us the intro and tell us, what you do, why you do, and how do you help people that say, so I need to build a brand?
Great question. I'll start with an intro. I'm Laura Viola Maccarone, and I have been a graphic designer for over 21 years. I started Rizbee Studio in 2016, and we've really narrowed down to helping people build their visual branding and package design in the food and beauty industries so that their products speak to their ideal clients and they fly off the shelves and into consumer hands, so that companies can then see their ROI and their investment in return. As far as branding is concerned, it's my jam. I love it. I love all aspects of branding, and I love it when they all come together. Visual branding is one component. It's a logo. Yes, it's a responsive identity suite, which is like your whole entire logo lockup system. And yes, it is all those components that make it beautifully, like visually beautiful and something for people to, land their eye on. But in the world of branding, there's so much more to it. There's so many different levels that build a brand and have a brand come together. And in doing so, you have to really build a brand from the floor up and making sure that it has a strong foundation. I would say that strong foundation is their ethos, their mission statement, all the components that really allow the brand to be successful and also identify with their ideal client.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that we want to talk about today is like, what are all those things that are going to make them successful? What are all the components? And I think that this probably resonates a lot with the industries that you work with because there are a lot more things to design. I'm a service provider, so I don't have products on the shelves or whatnot. When I first met you, there were so many more things involved in a design package for the consumer services industry than I ever knew. So I would love for you to share a little bit about that and why one of your focuses is consistency. Why is that so important to this whole messaging?
Oh, I think consistency and continuity throughout your brand is in peril. Like it's necessary, it's needed. It avoids any kind of brand confusion. It really allows the the consumer, especially around packaged goods, it allows immediate communication to the consumer. So there's no confusion over what it is that they're buying or they're picking up, which product is which. As far as like continuity, I think there at all touch points of the brand, there needs to be continuity. So whether it's your visual branding, your package design, or even your mission statement, your SEO, verbiage that you need on your website, that there is continuity through it all, so that
Yeah.
at every single touch point of your brand always goes back to the foundation of what that looks like for your ideal consumer, your ideal client, of who you want engaging with your brand.
Yeah, and it's such a good point, because I'm just imagining, if I work in an industry that's a little bit more serious, life science, healthcare. Imagine if I had colors that were like neon pink and, neon green and yellow or something that just doesn't really align with the language that I'm going to use to
Absolutely.
adjust to this audience.
Yeah.
And sometimes people think like, oh, it's probably, like my logo is just the colors I like, but it's also the things that are going to stand out to your audience. So
Yeah.
what is your process for identifying that? How do you help people pick the right colors and logos? And I'm thinking back to some of the, stories that we've done for you. Full disclosure, LPC has written some stories for Laura. That is just such a fascinating process for Abby and I to learn about. So tell us a little bit about like the organizational structure and, what does continuity mean on kind of almost like the back end?
Yes. So no, that's a great question, because I definitely keep continuity and consistency on the back end through the process. And my process is a little bit different. I don't just do a design brief and go and make 3 variations and then present to the client. My process is very different in the sense that I meet with the client either on a weekly schedule or every other week, and they're really along for the ride, and every nano decision that's made, every micro decision is leading towards the big picture. Because when you come to me and you tell me about your business and you tell me about your background, I don't know what your logo is going to look like.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I might have like an inkling to what it might end up looking like. I might feel like, oh my God, we could go in this direction. But that's just based off, it depends on how well I know the person. It depends on a myriad of things, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I think that the process starts for me with a mood board. And my mood boards are a bit complex, because we want the mood board to consist of many different components that give the overall essence and feel of what your brand is going to ultimately know and feel um, from the consumer side. So it's interesting, because the mood board is almost like a little bit, I like to look at it as an art piece in itself.
Yeah,
It
sounds
kind
like
of
it.
looks like a painting. And I always love at the tail end of the process where I love to show the client the mood board and their final presentation, and their final selection of the logo, and really show how it has come together. So that's always exciting to see, because you definitely see the continuity and you see how the mood board was its foundation. But what we do is a series of questions, and we nitpick everything. So I'll come to them with concepts, and I want my client to be like, okay, I don't like this, or
Yeah,
I'm leaning towards this. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, what don't you like about this? So that we're not like revisiting it in another aspect of it down the line. It's like,
yeah,
let me really dive into what it is that you don't like, and then let's really go over what it is that you love. So I think that it's a continuous conversation throughout the process. And that's my favorite part, is because while I'm providing the service and I'm doing the creative design part, it's really the working closely with the client on their input in how we drive the next steps to what it is that we're looking at. And that's how we get to the end where we have a full branding. I like to call it a visual vernacular system,
Ooh,
especially in the product industry, where they receive their branding guidelines at the end and all of their files and everything, and nothing is a surprise. Nothing's a
yeah.
surprise. Like everything is like, oh my God, this is, and they walk away truly feeling like that is their brand. Because I don't design for me. I love designing, but I love designing for the very specific client and their brand and what their goals are.
I love that. And so you talk a lot about, the questions and the digging in, and that's something that we do too as copywriters and content writers, and obviously the crux of where this conversation and this whole series came from. This is like the age-old question. Do people come up with the copy first when they're working with you? Do other way around? Kind of, what do you prefer, or what do you find that the clients like?
No, it's really, because I've worked with, I love that, because we've worked in all different scenarios where there's a concept, but they're not really identifying what the concept is. And they definitely need to go through the copyright process in order to really narrow in what their focus is and who their ideal client is. So I think it's a bit of a mixture. I think that things can be worked on simultaneously. I think that some things are better if they come in with it all kind of like in a bow, in a package.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but I do love working. I have to say that my favorite part is when we do work on it in a parallel kind of way, because then that gives the creative process even more expansion. So like we're able to work, again, we've worked with a client, you and I have, and through that process, it's allowed us to also have that, like that flow of creativity back and forth of like, understanding who the client is and what their service is and who their ideal client is. So I think that there's so many ways to approach it. I think that it is imperative to have your positioning, messaging, and identity before you go into all the other brand expansion elements. There's so many things that branding touches upon, and you want to make sure that your ultimate goal is your brand experience and your brand recognition. So you want to make sure that all those components are solidified and have a strong foundation, because that will just make for a more successful company.
Yeah. I was writing a blog about it, and I think I was in my head calling it like the North Star.
I love
You want that mission, your why, to really guide you, whether
Yes,
you're working with Laura or me. And I
yes,
agree that sometimes I come into the picture at different times.
yeah,
Sometimes I'll come into the picture halfway through. Sometimes I'll come in, hand in hand. And I also think it depends definitely on the company, like you said. If this is a rebrand, they don't need me to kind of start from the top. They just need me to finesse.
clean it up.
Whereas, yeah, like clean it up. Whereas, if it's a rebrand, that could look identical for you to a new brand, right? Because
Yeah,
if somebody is like, yep, scrap it all.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas for me, a rebrand is never going to be scrap it all.
right, right.
Unless you're changing your company totally, which I've never encountered that yet. So, I mean, I think it does all depend, and it is the age-old question. I've done it in all different types of ways, and I don't think there's a wrong answer. I know some
There's
people
not.
will
Yeah,
say, "Oh my God, the copy has to come first," or whatever. It really does depend on the scenario and your budget too,
Oh,
That,
that's a huge part. Yes, that's a huge component is the money. Like,
yeah,
absolutely, because and then if you wanna pick and choose what it is that you're going for, I understand that. Like, I understand budgets and I understand, what is the capacity that people have to work with.
yeah,
Um, I would love to touch upon the fact that there exactly what you said, there is no right answer as to like who do you go with first, but I would say that if you are truly committed to starting a company or committed to a brand refresh, then do your due diligence. Like, really understand what the deliverables are and what the expansion is for that what that company that you ultimately go with is going to deliver for you. What is it that they can deliver, and what is their endpoint? What's their limit? Whereas, like, if people come to Rizbee Studio, they can start with me at any point, really, because we can do branding from the ground up. We can do a branding refresh, which is my jam. I love doing branding refreshes. And then we can also do brand expansions. So they already have their brand looks phenomenal, but there are components that they're missing in their brand to take their brand to support them in the next level that they're going to. But I love with Rizbee Studio, you also get Lauren Perna communications. You also get a list day marketing. You
yeah.
also get, you know what I mean? So like it's no matter where you are in your journey, I think whether you start with Rizbee Studio or you start with Lauren Perner communications, it's definitely a place where you're going to find like the community that you need to build your brand, which is what I love. I think is so important. It's like understand who you're working with and understand who their network is and what like where it can lead you, because I think the more support you have and the more professional expertise you have, it's just going to set your brand up for the best success possible.
Yeah, and you're now in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think the cool part is that, for your focus is the design and the graphics, and my focus is the copy, and Elise Day comes in with the marketing strategy. Everybody kind of brings their area of expertise, which is a very different experience than if you are working with an agency, like a full service
Yeah.
agency, or if you are going to Upwork. Again, there is no wrong answer.
Correct.
This is just the service that people in our ecosystem are providing. And I've
Yeah.
had people on the show that are from agencies. I've had people on the show that are freelancers. It is, like Laura said, you guys, really figuring out what's going to work for you and your brand. Just because you are a huge corporation does not mean you need to go with a huge agency.
Oh,
This type
no.
of relationship may work well for you because then you have the specialized expertise of someone like Laura and someone like me. So I think that is important to remember, is that you are kind of looking for that experience. And the one reason I wanted to bring up the budget piece is because I do think if you are just starting out, it is completely okay to use like a template website, have like kind of Laura's low service area just to get yourself off the ground. And
Yep.
then when you're ready, she can come in and do that brand expansion, and you can come back and have a web team do something a little bit more extravagant.
Yep.
But when you're just starting, don't feel like you need to go for the whole
Exactly.
song and dance. I just don't think
Yep.
that's really necessary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, yes, exactly what you said. It depends on where you are in your brand. And I think the best part is that whether you come to me or you come to Lauren, we're able to like have that conversation with you and help you find that part out, because I've definitely had people come to me who's like, "Oh, I'm looking for a whole identity system." And by the end of the conversation, I'm like, "No, you don't need me yet. Like, not yet. Like, keep
Yeah.
doing what you're doing and what you have is service is like is serving you right in the moment. So just wait until like you hit that mark where you truly know who your client is. And maybe at that point I will even say, go work with Lauren and Abby to like really figure that out and expand that. And then when you're ready, like come back.
Yeah, and I think that's so true. And sometimes, we'll do quick write-ups for people, like, just like a quick 2, 3 page brand narrative. And we'll say, all right, since you're just starting, you're going to come back and see us in 6 months and tell us if you're still working on any of the same things.
Yes.
Because we have met with so many people that are like, 6 months later, you're going to kill me, but I don't even do half those things anymore. And it happens all the time, and it's
Yes, it does.
totally fine. That is just, we curate a different experience for those clients versus, the people that need the whole website copy and are working with Laura on their whole entire brand expansion. It's just a very different type of client. And I think it's just about recognizing like where you are in your journey.
Yes.
But what else was I going to say? So, one of our questions here is, like what should companies focus on first? And I think the answer for that really is it all depends, which is like a marketer's like
Yeah.
go-to term. But
Have the conversations. Have the conversations with you, have the conversations with me, have the conversations with the people each in their expertise, lanes. Like,
yeah.
but and then make the decision for yourself. And because that's how you'll find the avenue of where you need to go for sure.
Yeah. And do you feel that people that are in like beauty and food should automatically go with someone like you that knows this industries, and someone in life science should go with me? Or is it really about like the vibe and the collaboration with the designer and writer?
I think it's the vibe and the collaboration. I mean, I think about even just on my personal experience of working with you and Abby, like you guys delivered above and beyond, completely understanding and identifying Rizbee Studio. So I think it just depends on who it is that you click with. And yes, you can still have your expertise in the industry, but like this year earlier in the year I worked with 2 interior design companies and we completely rebranded them.
Oh, I
And
love that.
that was so much fun. And I love the work that we did, and it's beautiful. But they're not in food and beauty, Well, I mean, I
That's
guess
okay.
they're in beauty a little bit. Like,
Yeah, beauty for your house.
but it's completely different industries.
Yeah.
But we got along great, and they were exceptional clients to work with. So it's like, heck yes, like then we can still create beautiful things, whether it's with words or whether it's with imagery. I think the vibe plays a huge role in the creative process.
Absolutely. And I know this kind of goes a little bit against what we talked about in the very first session with Malika, where we talked about really like honing down and niching down. But I remember, guys, if you did watch the first one, go back if you didn't. But one thing she talked about is, having that like bullet center point that,
Yes,
that target of
yes,
people, it's food and beauty for Laura, it's life science for me. And then you have your kind of exterior clients. And yeah, maybe there is a time and a place when you really need to work with somebody that has your exact industry experience for whatever reason. But knowing that something as personal as the branding design and the branding copy, it may just be more of a vibe situation where, if you feel confident that people are going to be able to show up and be the partner you want, then that's okay.
mhm.
Those are just people on the outside of the bullseye.
They're taking notice of what you're doing, and they feel like that they're loving they love seeing what it is that you're producing, and they want a part of it too. So
Exactly.
I think it's a beautiful thing when that happens as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you talked about when we were preparing for this was really that the more you invest, the more ROI you're going to see.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's also about, recognizing your budget and stuff. But tell us a little bit about that aspect and, really why working with someone like you or me is just, yeah, it's an investment, but it's also really like what's going to move the needle.
I think that's definitely key is and it goes true to what we've been talking about this whole time is hiring people with the expertise in what it is that they do. You will see an ROI. You just will. You'll see it in so many different avenues, whether it's like a clear understanding of who your ideal client is and your messaging is on point and it's attracting new people, to is your packaging really catching the eye, and but is your packaging also reflecting back on what it is that your company stands for, what it is that your company, how your company wants to make an impact in the industry. Um,
Yeah.
so, or actually, even as a company in general, I mean, we both work with a lot of sustainability companies too, and how their imprint on just the world in general is also part of their mission. So
Yeah.
it's taking into consideration every single aspect of a brand in order to make that visual branding, that visual vernacular system accessible and really communicating to your ideal client. I've personally seen ROI from our clients in doing their rebrand and their refresh where they've had multiple products and their multiple products were kind of all the same
Yes.
visually, and we shifted their visual presence and their ROI, it's doubled and tripled, and
Oh my
it's
gosh.
incredible to watch, it's incredible to see. And it's
I love that.
it's being able to design something that fits their company goals for, the next year, the next 5 years to 7 years. And it's like, how do we create something that's really going to propel them into the into their goals and have them meet their goals and be successful?
I love that. And it was funny. I was like going to ask you for an example, but you read my mind because I think sometimes understanding that, getting that tangible example of what does Laura mean when, things aren't aligned brand wise. And that's truly how I understood, where, kind of what you do, interviewing your clients and whatnot. And this is just something as service provider, I don't necessarily think of, but, you guys think about if the Coca-Cola company, every single soda was the same label, you wouldn't know whether you were drinking Sprite or Dr. Pepper. And those are two very different flavor palettes.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what Laura's talking about is being able to not only people recognize, okay, well, I know that's a Coke product, but I also know it's Sprite instead of just like generic Coke. And that's the difference. Having that brand identity means that people not only love your brand, but your products and individual products.
Yeah. And then that trickles down to your user experience, so your brand experience, your branding identification, your and what's so interesting, and I think what led this conversation to, is that there are so many things. There's, branding copy, there's branding marketing, there's branding design, there's branding photography, there's branding, and there's all these like these components of branding. And it's really understanding that it takes every aspect, every touch point of branding in order to make a full beautiful user experience and a successful brand.
And on that note, mic drop. That was a beautiful way to end this. That is going to be a clip. You will see that clip in a few months. I couldn't have wrapped it up better myself. That was awesome, Laura. Thank you so much.
Thanks so
That
much
was
for
a half an
having
hour
me.
that went by so quickly.
It is.
We could talk about this all day, and guys, seriously, next year we're gonna have tons of conversations on this stuff. So be sure to let me know what guests you want to have back, what topics you want to talk about. Our next series is just going to wrap up the year. It's going to be great. I have the LPC team coming on, and we're going to give you some tips about what to look for ahead and just kind of reminiscing about this beautiful series that we've put together this year. This was just such a perfect way to end this series. I am so thankful for you, Laura, and
Oh,
I'm
right back at
thankful.
you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next month when we wrap up 2024. Like, where did the year go?
Bye.